Hailing frequencies open, and welcome to Star Trek Discoverage, the live podcast that boldly goes into excruciating detail about this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery. I'm your host, Aaron Coker, a.k.a. Caliban, and you can be mean, and I'll drink all the time. Joining me on this show, as usual, is my co-host. She's the co-host of the Generations Geek podcast as well, a more or less family-friendly celebration of geekdom. It's Ella Pearson. Ella, welcome back to Discoverage.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. It's winter break.
Yeah.
Although the past 2 days, I've been working very hard on my application to the Star Trek Command Training Internship Program.
Right. For people who don't know, tell us, give us a little quick brief on what that is.
Yeah, it's a new internship program that CBS launched this year for college students, where you get they call it a 360-degree immersion into the production of Star Trek. So it's an 8-week program in LA, and you go and you do you get to spend time in writers' rooms and do wardrobe design and spend time on set during production and learn about animating and do post-production stuff. So it's it's a lot.
It's very inclusive.
Yeah. They're putting an emphasis on opportunity for people who wouldn't have it originally, and diversity, which is amazing. So yeah. Hopefully I will have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a really intriguing program, and of course, they are no stranger to development with just CBS All Access and the work that Alex Kurtzman's Secret Hideout, production company's been doing. They are spitting out shows faster than anybody can count at this point, and there is no official word that I know of on season 4 of Discovery yet, but I think it's pretty much just assumed to be a fait accompli at this point.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, you think so?
With all the other, if they feel confident enough to announce and start the production of all of these other shows, I feel like Disco has to have a season 4 and beyond, probably.
Yeah, if they remember to. There's so much else going on here. Like these short treks, which I guess we'll just get right into, we have seen the 5th and final short film in a series of short films set in the universe of Star Trek Discovery called Short Treks, and we're talking about the Children of Mars this week. And before we start, as always, we're setting a course for the spoiler zone, so be warned, listeners. We're glad you've decided to join us, but if you haven't yet seen the last short trek, Children of Mars, spoilers are incoming. The official synopsis for Children of Mars is 12-year-old classmates Kima and Lil find themselves at odds with each other on a day that will change their lives forever. This episode is written by Kirsten Beyer, Alex Kurtzman, and Jenny Lumet. Beyer is, of course, a prolific Star Trek novel and comic writer. She's also a staff writer and executive story editor for Star Trek Discovery. She penned the first season Discovery episode Sivi Pacem Parabellum and the second season episode Saints of Imperfection. She's also on the writing staff and is a supervising producer for the upcoming Picard series. And, of course, Alex Kurtzman is, Alex Kurtzman. He and Lumet co-wrote the Season 1 short trek Runaway and wrote the second season finale, Such Sweet Sorrow, Parts 1 and 2. And the pair are set to write and produce a Silence of the Lambs sequel series for CBS All Access in the future, currently titled Clarice.
That was a lot.
Yeah, which is I know that there are a lot of hands now sort of on board as far as Star Trek goes, but it was interesting to hear. First of all, it was interesting to hear Michael Chabon to get that development deal with, I can't remember who, but for to develop Cavalier and Clay, I think, in his own work.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting, having him be such a big name on Picard, but then to hear that Kurtzman and Lumet are going to do a Silence of the Lambs thing, it's okay, all right, so maybe now we've got many hands to make more lighter work of this trek.
I mean, we can only hope. I just hope that everyone feels good, confident, stable, get some solid, the same staff for a couple seasons.
I mean, they'll have you in there to do the heavy lifting, so.
Exactly. So listen, CBS, I know in the future they'll be screening all these podcasts to check up on me when they review my application.
Right?
And
Yeah.
listen, I'll do all of it. And
You
I'll
should
do it for almost nothing because I'll be an intern.
you should probably brush up on your Thomas Harris just in case. This episode was directed by Mark Pellington. He previously directed the season 2 short trek Q&A. And there's a few interesting aspects to this episode. This episode is something of a prequel to the upcoming Picard series, and it's set on April 5th, first contract day, sometime in the 2380s. We don't know exactly what year, which makes it technically the latest that we've seen an episode or short set in normal continuity, at least until the upcoming premiere of Picard. This episode is credited as being based upon Star Trek The Next Generation, created by Gene Roddenberry, instead of based on Star Trek by Gene Roddenberry. This is the first CBS production to say that. The episode titles are also in the TNG font. It's also the first episode in the franchise to feature a split-screen framing that is not diegetic to some form of communication in the world. This is when we see the girls leaving their room at the beginning of the short.
Yeah.
And it also featured the second use of non-diegetic pop music in a Star Trek episode. The first was the use of Johnny Appleseed by Bing Crosby in The Trouble with Edward. In this episode, it's Peter Gabriel's cover of David Bowie's 1977 song Heroes from Gabriel's 2010 album Scratch My Back.
But doesn't it just remind you of Moulin Rouge?
You know, it shouldn't.
It's just like...
I liked that song before Moulin Rouge came out. I knew about that song before Moulin Rouge came out, but now Moulin Rouge has infected that song forever for me. Yeah, so it does. Yeah, it does remind me of that. What'd you think of Children of Mars?
It's just that the whole it felt like a trailer for the short trek. Do you know what I mean? The way it was
Yeah.
the way it was edited, I was like, are we having a montage? Is it like when it started I was like, oh, are they doing a preview before the short trek starts? Like, I don't know how to describe. It just felt like I was waiting for something to start the whole time.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned a preview or a trailer, and it made me think of the current real popular trend in trailers of having like a slowed down cover of a very famous song. You know, you see that a lot in trailers these days, and that's what this reminded me of. So, and I'm getting really annoyed at that trend, but maybe it's Gabriel's fault. We can blame him. He's the one who took Heroes and slowed it down in 2010. And this, it's hard because anytime that you go sub 10 minutes, I find myself having not a lot to say. This comes at a interesting time, not only in the future of Star Trek with the premiere of our first sequel series, really, in Picard, but also in our discussion of these short treks, because I feel like this whole sort of season or brace of short treks, we've been really kind of tearing at ourselves, trying to figure out how to feel about them. And then this comes as kind of an exclamation point or maybe a period in the same font or typeset as the whole rest of the thing, which is I kind of wanted them to show me something, and they're doing, I guess, what we've talked about short treks, what they should be doing, which is supporting, or giving depth to other material in the universe. But yeah, you're right. This just feels like, hey, check out Star Trek Picard, January 23rd. And I'm going to, but I'm never going to know anything more about Kima or Lil. I'm fairly certain. I don't think we're going to see them again. Who knows? And as far as the enticing glimpses that we get, none of it is. I don't need anything to tide me over for 13 days. Do you know what I mean? Like we have this interesting picture of Jean-Luc Picard. Admiral Picard is like, oh, this is a horrible attack, and then the attack itself. Like before I saw that, we didn't really know exactly when this was set, and I'm like, when did Mars get nuked? Like I don't remember this in any of the Star Trek history, but of course it's not. This is future history, so. So yeah, I don't know. As far as an inciting incident goes for Picard, I guess it's an interesting one, but we don't receive a lot of information, and of course we'll get it in the series. But I did think it was interesting. These are unfamiliar ships, unfamiliar adversaries, and they're referred to as synths. And so I'm wondering what you think is going on with that.
I didn't know that was a thing, but that just sounds like, what is that? Is that what they say in Alien? Do they say, who says synth? Is it Blade Runner?
I think they might use synth as a terminology for the guys in Blade Runner. But I mean, generally, I know
sounds like
like robots or or artificial beings or something like that.
Something that's not what we would call biological, however you want to phrase it. I don't know.
Right. Well, it's certainly an othering term. I mean, I don't think anybody enjoys being called a synth unless you're, like a retro 80s musician or something.
Yeah. If you're going to make a 6-minute short film, let's say, I just feel like you don't have time to do the world building thing at the beginning.
Yeah.
It feels like they kind of shoot in those voiceovers so that we would have a little bit more context.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess I don't know if I feel the same way with the other short tracks, but it's like this one, I'm like, I feel like you need to trust your audience a tiny bit more. Just because it's like, we know, it's like everyone who is watching the short tracks is already a Star Trek fan. Like, we're going to go very fast from seeing her dad on the thing at the mining colony to be like, oh, it's the mining colony is getting, bombed, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It was just it felt very montage-y.
Well, I guess as a media and film student yourself, I'm really interested then in your sort of take or your review of the short filmitude of this. It is very music video feeling, and the biggest I know it's a stylistic choice, but other than that, the biggest question I have, or the thing I would question, is just the video, the hero's montaginess of it. It's certainly meant to make an impression, but I thought that the characterization, it should have been longer. I don't know how else to say this, so I'm going to start off saying that I would have loved 15 minutes.
I'm not sure why it wasn't longer.
Yeah,
but I feel like it needed to be longer.
Yeah,
because in 6 or 7 minutes, if you're making a short film, an episode of TV that's under 10 minutes, it needs to be very black and white. You know what I mean? Like, there needs to be a very simple. It needs to be A to B, and it needs to be A to B fast, so that at the end you're not left just feeling like, why did I watch that?
Yeah. But I did feel like if somebody said to them, well, this hero song is only 6.5 minutes long, that's what you got. I felt like within those constraints, I thought they did some nice touches. Like immediately we see that these girls have similar yet somewhat different lives. Their relationships with their parents are different. They have a conflict that immediately escalates. It's clearly about more than just whatever petty thing is going on between them. And you want more, once you set all that up, you want more of a payoff to that than just, this is a day of tragedy, I guess, that will just erase all conflicts and, and disagreements between people. But I don't know. I usually expect more out of the characters that we build in Star Trek. Like, I wanted to see, and I just like these two in the story, they are victims of this tragedy on Mars, but from a meta sense, their characters are victims to hey, check out Picard coming in a couple weeks. I feel bad for Kima and Lil. I wanted to know more about their lives and what's going to happen to them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like the what they're going for is so relatable. Oh, you're in middle school and you're fighting with your classmate because both of you are mad at your parents. That's very the way, I don't know, just how angry they get so fast with each other. I feel like it's really relatable. People relate to that. We understand what's going on and we want to see them be friends at the end. But you're right that it's oh, all of a sudden Mars is being bombed, so we're going to hold hands and watch the view screen. And I would rather, I would even the tiniest change, like they didn't realize they were holding hands. Like they just grabbed each other without thinking.
Yeah.
To comfort each other. Like even that I would have felt a little bit like better, but like, yeah, you're right. It should have been like 15 minutes. And yeah, it could have been a much better payoff and we could have gotten to know the characters a little bit more.
Just dramas interruptus. Well, this is like technically, I guess, the 9th one that we've seen, and I don't think that every necessarily short trek has followed this, but this is definitely the supreme triumph of, I think, style over substance in terms of Star Trek storytelling. I think that going from cardboard sets of TOS with scripts and dialogue that are just hammered out to the nth degree, to more of a shift to the other side on CBS All Access, which of course is in glorious 4K, and you can let a lot of the storytelling or the visuals do the storytelling for you. This is, we wonder how far ahead these are planned and what they are really designed to do, but this is basically just a glowing neon billboard for watch Star Trek Picard.
Yeah, well, not even because when Picard starts, he's already been like retired or however you want to call it for a while, right? And then he goes back. So in this, he's still Admiral. So I feel like, yeah, I mean, they're giving us this like nugget. It's like, oh, why'd he leave? Like, what happened? Like, what's he gonna do? What happened? Like, who's on the ships? But it's like, I would like an Easter egg maybe, but yeah, I don't know. It just seems like, I mean, we talked about this before about how the first round of short treks were all very tied into that season of Disco. And now it seems like they don't really have a specific like idea of what they want from like the short treks as like a group, like as a whole, like this past, like, cause it's not really a season, but this past like round of short treks is like, they're all like completely different, which I do think is fantastic. And I like really appreciate it. And it's very interesting. And they're doing something that's like very new. But yeah, but then it doesn't always, it doesn't work out that well sometimes.
I wonder too, and not that every like Star Trek series has to have a real easy log line and kind of weigh in to what the plot's going to be, but I wonder at the sort of multiple sort of angles or fragments we're getting into what Picard will ultimately be about. Like we've seen in previews that it will involve this mysterious girl. We know that 7 or 9 is there, but if you read like the prequel comic Countdown, it involves Picard in the process of doing this giant armada to save the Romulans from the destruction of their system, and you find out that like in the planning and progression of this armada and the evacuation, the Romulans are sort of prioritizing some populations over others, which goes totally against the Federation and like Picard's principles. And so he ends up sort of getting in trouble because he's defying, the powers that he's supposed to work with. So you get that aspect. Now we've got this thing with the synths. And I wonder, like, are they trying to introduce like, what will become these like sort of separate plot elements in Picard? And it makes me, we know that Data, it will be in some way involved in the upcoming Picard show. So I wonder if like, are the synths, are they Datas or something like that? Are they the result of...
I will lose my gourd if it's just a bunch of, and Data's like, well, they're that means they're sort of my species. I will lose it, bro.
I'd keep a chain on your gourd because you might be heading for something like that. I mean, I've talked a lot on, and I didn't know I was inadvertently causing something, but I've talked a lot on Enterprising Individuals about just the lack, I think, from the beginning of interest in storytelling about sentient robots, about AI and intelligent machines. I don't think it was something that really mattered to Gene when he was creating Star Trek. And even though it became very popular in our, modern sci-fi in the late 20th century and early 21st century, it never really found its way that much into Star Trek. But I think it's game on now.
Really
I think that,
yeah,
it looks like we are very interested now on the Star Trek side in telling those kind of stories. And so, yeah, when I heard about synths were going to be involved in this, I was like, whoa, okay, I think we are really now nosing over into definitely wanting to explore that unexplored part of Trek. And, that's probably a good idea, but why the Peter Gabriel songs? I don't know.
I mean, we can only hope that it's as good as Measure of a Man, because that is
yes, yeah,
one of the best episodes.
Exactly. What was it called? It was called like the Arizona Accords, or maybe I'm just calling it that because Melissa likes the Southwest. But yeah, like when Melissa wrote Measure of a Man, she had to come up with a couple things that were like a fake history in Trek of how they had dealt with things, because Gene still he wasn't interested in telling those stories. Mm-hmm. So we're going to get those stories now.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I just hope it's, obviously Measure of a Man is like my favorite Star Trek episode of like almost ever. But it's also like, I feel like the thing with Gene is like he wanted to tell very human stories. You know what I mean? And so
which is so funny, because every time that you get, or most of the time that you get those kind of stories, you are literally, even though it's not a quote unquote flesh and blood human, you are looking at what it means to be human. Like that Gene loves things like that. So I don't understand why he couldn't project that into artificial intelligence stories.
No, yeah, I mean, you're right. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. I'm very I have no idea what to expect. And it's winter break, so it feels like time has stopped. And I kind of forgot that we were so close to the first episode dropping, to be honest.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. I mean, it sparked a conversation. I mean, I think that, we've been here talking about it. So I think for that reason, it's good. I just wish that, when I come away from watching a piece of Star Trek media, I expect to possibly have a larger discussion I want to have, but also I want to be discussing that piece of Star Trek media. And so many of the short treks this year have felt like, yeah, okay, just kind of like invitations to talk about something else that's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, is this the last one now
for
before
this
Picard?
round? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's all she wrote.
I just, they could have made it, maybe if they had made it even shorter. You think, like, if they had cut it down even more than with this same kind of montagey, like slow music cover playing in the background, it would have felt a little more natural if it was at like 3 minutes or even just 5, but then it really would have felt like just a commercial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we talk about that bald Vulcan though? That was funny. Have they ever should given us an old bald Vulcan man?
That guy was older than Mark Lenard. Yeah, it was. I would hesitate to make it shorter, but maybe there's something to just in every time you do something in the future, it's kind of a thing. It's kind of cool, or it's a technique for something to be really mundane, but yet in the future. Yeah. And this is the J.J. Abrams playbook, like up and down, like driving a Cadillac through the desert, listening to the Beastie Boys, and then a robot cop chasing you.
That's kind of a sick scene, though.
Yeah. So just for me, just seeing like 2 girls go to this school, which we don't really know what it is, but it seems like it's some sort of organizational school. And they're, having holo lessons, but yet they're having these very mundane, like, meet me in the hallway right now, and they're like fighting each other and just seeing these
love
things.
It though, because I feel like it just always, middle schoolers at big schools are just always like that.
They're always like
no matter what you do. Yeah, it's like an alien planet, and she's still like, get up. Right,
yeah. Put some soap in a sock. Yeah, right.
Literally.
Yeah, but I mean, just like, I don't think we're out of the woods of like still seeing things like that, in Star Trek or in a future thing, and it's supposed to like ignite this friction in us for like, oh yeah, okay, they're like us still, even in 2380.
there's still two 14-year-old girls having a fist fight in the
We're
hallway.
never going to
It's
fix
so
that.
awesome.
Yeah. We've cured wealth and want, but yeah, young girls getting it
Listen,
on.
14-year-old girls, they're gonna go at it. 14-year-olds in general, I feel like
Synths or
just
no
pent up
synths?
rage. Synths or no synths.
Well, here at the end of season 2 of the short treks, where do we go from here? We've had one season, or season 1, season 2, definitely meant to achieve something different. I think if there was a season 3, and I'm willing to debate whether there should be one. Where should it go?
Well, I mean, I think it's to me, it is clear that the quality in the short treks came from using characters that were already established in ships and locations that were already established, except for kind of Calypso. But unless they make some changes to the short tracks, I would hope they go back to what it was like when they did those first 4, and they were like those 15-minute spots, like character highlights almost.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And Calypso, presuming that we can presume what I think a lot of people have, that it will be connected to Discovery's Journey to the Future, that was a long bet for them. That was a season-long bet. And it came from, a producer or executive producer in Michael Chabon, but still. I think that that is a good sign, like Calypso, like you mentioned. I think that this is so new still, and I know that people like Alex Kurtzman have a ton of ideas, and they're willing to take it a long way, or at least as long as their 5-year contract. But I think the longer this is around, the more we could do with them. You know what I mean?
I mean, I wish. Like, I feel sad even saying that they should go back to just connecting them to the whatever season the Star Trek is running, because it feels like so like good and new and like special to just have this like Star Trek content that is just kind of like, oh, we're gonna write these shorts and like produce them, and like that's really interesting, and it feels like it's a big part of like the way content is distributed now, is you can do these kind of weird things because it's CBS All Access. So we can post whatever we want. We can do short treks, and one of them has Spock, and one of them is animated, and like all this stuff. But I wish that they would. I mean, I don't know what is really. I don't know what's like holding them back per se from making something like Calypso.
Yeah, I think that it's.
I don't know.
That's a good question. I can't remember. I don't think anybody is necessarily like when you've got Discovery, you've got a set of producers, you've got a writer's room, you've got a production that is doing Discovery, and then you've got a production that is doing Picard. I don't think that anybody is like there isn't like a short treks production. If it was, I know it's not like an ongoing series, but if it was treated like as a more important thing and a thing of its own, I think that it could have more identity and cohesion in that way. But I think that going forward they should be, I mean, if you have to burn one to promote Picard, fine, but I think they're less interesting when they're doing that, and they're more interesting when they're doing something like Calypso, which if nothing had ever came of that would have been like, wow, that's a little weird sort of side story, but instead becomes, oh, I understand now, this is like a fragment of the universe we will be seeing later. Mm-hmm. And if you could use it to, and having like, oh, it's Spock's laundry day, like having like a side story about characters we know is fine. But I also think it'd be interesting to like use it to take bets on things that we could see in the future. You know how like every week on Star Trek, it's a reset, at least in the old show. So you'd have to meet somebody. And if it's somebody like the outrageous OConnor, oh boy, they have to take all this time to tell us how outrageous he is. And like, oh, he's going to get into some crazy schemes. Look out, everybody. If we had like a short trek where we met the outrageous OConnor and he got into some crazy scheme, and it didn't even have anything to do with like the Enterprise necessarily. Later on, when they run into OConnor and and he's on the main show, like we already know, oh boy, what's going to happen with this guy? Like we've seen him do some other dumb thing. Like if they used it for things like that to sort of sketch in the margins of their world and not necessarily worry about it connecting or featuring bummer covers of popular songs. I think that's how it would be best used.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, we pretty much always agree, but you're you're absolutely right. I just don't know. It's like I feel bad kind of ragging on them, but it's like they gave the first four were so good, you know? So it's like they set a very high standard for themselves. But I think you're right. That's an interesting point about how those first four might have been going more through the disco production staff and the writers room, and now these ones maybe are getting a little bit sidelined. That would make sense.
Yeah. This, I mean, you're applying for a job from them, and the show's coming out. So, I mean, we know as a production, this thing's doing fine, but it's not one of those things where, I mean, at this point, you probably know more about TV production than I do, but I know that like a lot of franchises have a singular person, a creator usually, or a core of creators or writers that kind of move them forward. And then when something becomes a franchise, it becomes more fragmented often, and it ends up pursuing, different goals in terms of what it wants. And it seems like Trek has for so long been a Gene Roddenberry thing. And then even then there were people carrying the torch to Rick Berman, to Michael Piller, to so on and so forth, that now it just seems like it took almost no time at all for Trek to come back. People, liked it, and it was doing well, and it's like, here we go, buddy, let's do it. Let's spin this thing up. Let's fire the Trek machine up. And part of me is like, is that how it's done, though? Like, who are you going to point to? Is Alex Kurtzman really the Gene Roddenberry or the Rick Berman or the Michael Piller of this age? I'm not willing to say that. But he's the guy running things.
I mean, here's the question is, if they didn't launch immediately like 5 other Star Trek shows after launching Disco, what would be on CBS All Access?
Well, you have Clarice. You
have, CBS, if you're listening, that's a joke.
She does want to work on the second season of Twilight Zone. Come on.
Even you as a company.
I think they'd be okay. I mean, in this day, it always takes time to build a TV network. It always takes time to build a franchise. I'm old enough to remember how much fun everybody used to make fun of Fox, because Fox thought that they were going to be a TV network. And now Fox is bigger than, the big three. Often it's not even three anymore. And so CBS All Access has had like this amazing growth that's still not going to be fast enough for people on Twitter, but I've always said that, like, as much as I appreciate Trek for its themes and for the kind of stories it's tried to tell, and I want to protect my little cinnamon roll, I also think, mess it up a little bit. Like, let's run it through the moneymaker and see what happens. Every franchise does this, and you have to monetize and sell and diversify everything. And so, make an animated one, make a bunch of short ones, make a bad guy, make a Giorgio one. Like, why not? It's not all going to succeed. It can't. But let's see where we're going now, because it's been 50 years, and I'm pretty sure we can't have the new captain just talking robots to death. That's not going to work. But now that I'm seeing it happen in person, I'm like, oh, are you sure about that?
I don't know.
We don't know. That's the takeaway from this. We have no idea.
I just have a lot of questions that no one can answer besides Mr. CBS.
Mr. CBS. I gotta talk to Mr. CBS.
I'm gonna call him and say, please review my application.
He's just a big eye. Well, hopefully he gets to see your application. I guess that's pretty much it for this episode and this round of Short Treks. And I guess we'll be back if there is another one. Nothing's been announced just yet, but I'm sure we'll be doing this again in the future. But that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us, listeners. If you like what you hear here in this kind of discussion, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at EISTPOD for updates and get notified when new episodes of Discoverage and also Enterprising Individuals, our main show, are released. You can tweet to us on this show by using the hashtag Discoverage, or you can email us at eistpod@gmail.com. And while you're on the internet, head to your listening platform of choice and subscribe to the show. Give us a rating and a review if you think of it, because it really does help us out. And as always, if you like the show, tell a friend. Discoverage, in its current form, will be returning on January 23rd for the premiere of Star Trek Picard. We'll be going live just a few minutes after the Picard finishes airing on CBS All Access that Thursday. So please, watch Picard. You go hit the bathroom. You come right back, because we're going live with our review and discussion of the Picard premiere right after it airs. You can follow us on Twitter or Facebook at EISTPod to get notified when we're going live and we're broadcasting. In the meantime, check out the main show at Enterprising Individuals at enterprisingindividuals.com. And we just recently finished our 4th season of the show. We're currently on a hiatus. We'll be returning pretty soon with a whole new season of shows. So now is a good time to check out some of our recent episodes or any of the fine programs on our Just Enough Trope network, available at justenoughtrope.com. Ella, thanks as always for joining me to talk about Star Trek. Remind people where they can find you online.
Yeah, you can find me and my dad's podcast at Generations Geek on Twitter and wherever you listen to podcasts. And there will be a decently sized announcement coming. I don't think I have the authority to make it today, but things are happening.
Oh, okay.
I will say. Things are happening.
Wheels are turning.
Wheels are turning. So stay tuned. And yeah, so just check out our feeds on Apple Podcasts and stuff.
Okay. And you can find them, of course, at generationsgeek.com. And that is it for us. Thanks for listening, everybody. We are signing off. This is Aaron for Ella saying, live long and prosper.